And welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and we're going to be discussing the film Annette, which is on Amazon Prime. If you've not hit the sub button, please do so. Leave a like, a comment. This is a full spoiler discussion, so if you've not seen the film and you don't want to be spoiled, leave now, watch the movie, and then come back. I will say it is a very long movie. I want to start with Spencer specifically because of the three of us, he enjoyed the film the most. I know myself, I had a lot of issues, and Larry did too, and we're going to dive into all those. But Spencer, you trying to sell this movie? What is it that you liked? What was it that? Why did it speak to you?
Well, I look at it from a musical, theater kind of aspect because, a lot of movies, I loved Sweeney Todd. When I was I want to say like middle school, when I was in Germany, a teacher who loved theater showed me a bunch of old VHS tapes from like Broadway plays. So he did like Sweeney Todd, Phantom of the Opera, like a bunch of these musicals that to me were at the time all we had was AFN when I was in Germany, which is the Armed Forces Network. So it was you didn't get to see anything. It was awful. So I watched these VHSs, and that's when I started liking musical theater. It's this long journey, a little bit overdone, over the top, but it was always something I liked. And to me, this was like a live action version of a stage play. Because they with Johnny Depp did Sweeney Todd, and it wasn't poorly done, but it didn't feel like the play. There's a bunch of Phantom of the Opera movies. They don't feel like the stage play. This legit, even looking at it, like the way that the camera was shot, the whole boat scene, everything felt like a stage play. So there are some things that I was just like, and it was a little long, but overall, there's a lot of things that I picked out of it that helped it make sense, and I really did enjoy it a lot.
Larry,
Yeah,
a counter or your what was the biggest driving negative? Because I think me and you are on the same page as far as the negative.
well, for one, I think the beginning was way too long. Like you text me after we watched this that you felt like like that the first half could have been condensed. So the pacing like just really bothered me because it feels like the last 45 to 30 minutes of this film should have been the bulk of this film and what it's about. It's called Annette, but we have this huge lead up, and like yeah, we can have that lead up, but it didn't seem very significant to the end, or like it took a while before we got to see how monstrous Henry can be, and maybe we could have used some more of that at the beginning, or led into that a little more fluidly. So I think my biggest gripe is the pacing, and like I really just didn't dig a lot of the early songs. There was a ton of repetition, a lot of people, a lot of repetition and a lot of exposition of, I'm this thing, I'm this thing, I'm this thing, and just repeating it. And that killed a lot of the songs for me.
Well,
Go ahead, Spencer.
I was just saying from a musical theater standpoint, that can be tiresome, but that happens all the time. Hamilton, like there's this one song that he sings over and over and over, Phantom of the Opera. It's kind of like a repeat because it's showing like character growth, and it's showing this character is tying into it's a way of them like tying the story together, and it happens a lot. So that's why, like I was saying, this felt like a stage play brought to a movie screen. It 100% did, because like you said, that's something that irritated you, but that was something that reminded me of musical theater. It doesn't mean that I liked it or disliked it. It just, that's what it reminded me of.
I think the biggest gripe I have is, like Larry said, the film is basically structured. You have the first hour and 30 minutes, which is the lead up to the Annette story. And the Annette story is about 40 minutes, the final 40 minutes. I really enjoyed that final 40 minutes. As a matter of fact, the last two scenes, the trial and then the jail scene, phenomenal. I absolutely was invested in that. That first hour and 30 minutes, my biggest gripe is the two sort of one man show sequences in which Adam Driver is a comedian and he comes out on stage and performs for an audience. The second one wasn't. I didn't dislike. I thought it was okay, especially when it went into song. But that first one was so damn long.
Yeah.
And I understand what they were trying to do later in the film. I was starting to get it, but to me, that was, in my opinion, that's not how I would have started this film. Not at all. That I think it was too long, too weird, too odd, to be the opening of the. Well, it's not the direct opening, but it's basically the second major set piece outside of the opening sequence. I think that should have been either slimmed down or moved to a different point. Because I quite enjoyed, because we get to see him at work, and then we get to see Anne, who's an opera singer, and we get to see her perform. I liked all that stuff. It was specifically, to me, that pulled me out of the film for that moment, and it was that was my biggest gripe, or the biggest thing I had issues with in terms of how the pacing started at the opening.
That first scene, 15 minutes, yeah, that was rough. In fact, that made me think that I wasn't sure whether, like, I started planning, like I paused the movie, right after that scene, and I thought to myself, like, okay, if this is going to be a rough watch, how can I break this up to make this bearable for myself? That's how rough that was for me. Like you said, that first bit where he did comedy, but luckily it got better as it went on. But I did also have a very hard time getting through that.
I didn't have a hard time getting through it, but I did feel like it was longer than necessary, because I felt like when they showed the opening and it showed all the characters and they were like laughing and singing.
I like that.
Well, that was like the opening of Sweeney Todd, where they have everybody singing, kind of explaining what the story is. Even the beginning of Hamilton, they show all the people. Bert comes out and he's like, "Me, I'm the damn fool who shot him." Like, they're talking about what the story's kind of going to be about, and that's what they did with this. So, like we said before, very much like a stage play. But that opening sequence to me was trying to show his public persona, how he was to play off that he was an asshole, but we didn't know he was an asshole yet.
A glimpse of his psyche. Like,
Yeah.
I get it now, but
It was still, to me, it was longly unnecessary. They could have done that quicker, where it kind of shows everybody's on board, everybody, buying into his persona, that he's not really that way, and it's kind of a joke, even though he really is a crazy asshole. But it, like you said, it could have been cut down. That 15-minute could have been like 5 or 6.
Yeah, and I do feel like in a way that was necessary, but like you said, it could have been shorter, and it does give you a glimpse into his psyche, and it kind of gives you an idea of who he is as you're, deep down, especially at the end when he finally tells you why he's a comedian, to disarm people. And it's like, well, why do you need to disarm people? It puts that question in your head, but they could have done that, as you said, a little quicker.
I was one thing they do it throughout the entire film, and I thought it was pretty cool. Yet again, going to that theater aspect, was when the audience or a large group of people are all singing or joining in. The movie does that pretty well throughout. I thought that was pretty neat. What was your favorite, like, song numbers? I know, Larry, you said that it was a little rough in that first patch. I agree. The only one that stood out to me that I really enjoyed was the childbirth. I like the song. I just like the way it was shot. I like even the camera positioning. The childbirth sequence, it was to me a decent little musical number.
Mm-hmm.
Any one, and besides the ending, I'm not counting the ending because that's my favorite. But and we're gonna go in depth into the ending. But is there a musical number that either you that stood out as something you really liked?
Yes. The part where it showed that, and I explained part of this off air, when we've watched a lot of things with narcissistic antagonists in them recently, and this to me was showing how he was super narcissistic, but he pulled the wool over everybody's eyes until you finally found out who the real person was. So when he first was with Anne, and showing her how great of a person he was, how he was funny, and the whole song leading up to their sexual encounter, that whole thing, like, dude,
I like the walk when they're walking. You're talking about through the woods
yeah,
and yeah. That's a good song too. Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. So the whole sequence leading up to the part where he was coming downstairs on her,
And she's
and
still
then
singing.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's still singing it, and then he would stop and lift his head up and start singing. Dude, it was super over the top and super funny, but it was a great segue. Now seeing the whole thing, showing how he was being that good person, but he was being that good person to get her to fall in love with him. And that was my favorite. Well, like you said, outside of the final sequences, that one and the one on the boat.
Yeah, and I think you've all named every section that I've liked, but with the exception of I was intrigued by the first song with the accompanist that became the conductor later on, and and like that first song, as I mentioned prior to us recording, that made me think like, oh, this guy's going to be the villain. He's gonna stir the pot in this, because it seems like he has big plans, and it seemed potentially like he was jealous of Anne. But this, so that one caught my interest. But the song I liked afterwards was, when it's where we have our time skip and he's a conductor and everything, and we get a bit of clarity on what he's going to do, and you're seeing his emotional state, and that gives you a good idea of where his head is throughout the rest of the movie, and you wonder like how long is he going to keep up this ruse with Henry, and how long is he going to hold his tongue on what the situation really is.
I do love that his name is Henry McHenry.
Yeah.
They call it. I don't know. I was like, that's going to be my any RPG video game I play. I'm going to be Henry McHenry.
I kept wondering whether that was like a stage name or his actual name.
I don't know. Let's go into the second half. We've given our concerns, our issues, I would say, with the first half. The second half of the movie is completely different than the first half, because now we have a situation where he kills Anne. They had a child, which he learns might not be his, possibly the conductor's, but he doesn't learn that till the end. But the point is, the rest of the film is about Annette, who's this like marionette puppet daughter who has the ability to sing, which is sort of a curse given by her mother to affect Henry. Y'all can jump in as far as if you interpret it differently.
Well,
go ahead.
No, I was hoping when she wasn't the doll at the very end.
Yeah.
Felt like they were trying to say, because this is my interpretation of a odd musical brought to the big screen. Well, my big screen, I guess. That he was using her to try and control Anne, because there were several scenes where he was using the baby to control other aspects of his life, to help control Anne. He was using it to control the conductor. He was using her as a pawn to make money. So she was like a puppet to him being used. And then at the end, when he finally went to jail, she was alive.
Yeah.
And then they showed the puppet laying on the ground. So like, that's what I took from that.
I was thinking if it was symbolic, but then there were certain scenes that were so outlandish. At that point, I was like, even if it is, I don't get whatever.
Well, yeah.
When she flew in on the drones,
yeah,
I was dying.
Like all of the, and like you said, even I felt like it was symbolic, like there was meaning behind it. But you have this puppet that with these giant fucking ears, like it was. I mean, Adam Driver's got some big ears too, so it's not a. So that's why when they were like the debate on whose child it was, I was like, Marion Cotillard and the dude from Big Bang Theory. Yes. One of their ears are that big, so there is no way that that's not Adam Driver's kid.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's Edward James Olmos's with the skin and ears, but yeah, I saw the same thing you did.
Will Smith's kid.
It- I have a I have a theory, and I want to know what you guys think. Um, about the meaning of the film, and specifically going into that final scene and with the puppet or whatever, the real girl. Was there some kind of woven in mess? You know, the film takes place in L.A. It's California. These are two celebrities. They have a At the end of the day, they have a daughter who is also pushed into the world of celebrity. Everything comes crashing down. Is there some kind of message about the destructive nature of celebrity being in Hollywood, exploiting your children? You think
Yeah.
there was something in there about that, especially some of the dialogue she had at the or some of the songs she had at the end? I was like, is that what the bigger meaning of this is? Or I don't know. What do you guys think?
It seems to be, and that's what I took from it. That it seemed like more of a, instead of showing this is what the industry does, it seems to be more of a view at like these are the people that do these kind of things. Because we got that with, Adam Driver's character being the person doing the exploiting, exploiting his wife, exploiting his daughter, So it did seem like sort of a dive into that, but more of a personal look, and oddly enough, from the perspective of the person that does this thing. And we see scenes where like he's this cruel manipulative person that hand waves all of his cruelty and exploitation, you know and we see him happiest when he's using the resources that he builds from using these people.
Yeah, I agree that that was a central focus. When you when they kept showing like the tabloids and the I don't remember the name of the like station, the those celebrity news or whatever, like it would pop on and they would show them. I think that on top of the exploitation and those kind of things is also showing that as consumers we get caught up so much with wanting to know what's going on in these people's personal lives that they don't have one, with
it,
tab everything else.
yeah, and I gotta agree with that because that was my thought when we got to the scene where like you said with the drones, Brian, and Annette won't sing, and he's like, give her a minute, after all she is a baby, and it's like, well then,
Yeah.
yeah, why is this happening?
That's a great. You know what? I didn't even think about that, but the fact that they put her on a literally this pedestal up into the sky for everyone to gawk at, and the guy literally, you're right, Larry. He says she's just a baby. Give her a shot,
But
or wait. Yeah, there's an exploitive nature to all of that.
on that same note, remember what he said when he went like off air when they're all sitting in a booth, and he's like, "What the hell is this little bitch doing?" or something like that.
Yeah,
Like
that
he's telling everybody to be patient, but then he's still one of the exploiters, and he's being like, "This bitch needs to get it together. Come on, let's do it." So it, the I think that theme of what they're outwardly showing us versus what's really happening too was a kind of woven throughout the entire story as well.
Do you think it was Adam? And this is a weird question, but I want to go into it. Do you think it was his? So the persona of Henry McHenry, the way he performs on stage, he wears, gets down to his boxers, he wears like a robe, he eats a bunch of bananas and smokes like a whole bunch of cigarettes while working out. It's a weird thing. Do you think that was a script thing, or do you think that was an Adam Driver thing? Because I was the whole time I'm like, I don't. I just feel like this. He brought this to the part. I don't know.
you think that's the sort of thing where he's like, or maybe he read the script and he's like, well, this is what I do
This
anyway,
is
so
yeah.
it's what I do at home.
Smoke a pack of cigarettes while jump roping. Um,
I
like
think
it's.
reading,
Go ahead.
I think as he was reading the script, and he was like, "You're a stand-up comedian." He's like, "So how can I incorporate Andrew Dice Clay with
Yeah.
with the Marine regiment that I'm used to?" And that's how he tied it together.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, all the smoking on top of the working. Yeah. Sort of the clash of worlds there.
Definitely, because I was thinking, I was like, he's awfully strong for this style of comedian. He's like you look at that style of comedian, and it's usually kind of a slubby guy. It's not someone who's fit as a Marine.
It's not someone who could legitimately beat your ass. Normally, somebody talks about beating your ass.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording how he just ragdolls that dude after he drowns him. Like Adam Driver is strong as hell. He picks that dude up like he's nothing. I would not fuck with Adam Driver.
Yeah, and there's no like suspension of belief there. You look at that scene and you think, yeah, Adam Driver could definitely do that.
Yeah, there's no way I would have walked to the pool with him. Speaking of pool, that was the creepiest pool. Like, what I didn't like, and this is off topic from the film itself, but with all the nature and shit around it, I'd be like bugs and all kind of shit would get in the pool. I'd be afraid to get in the pool. You know, spiders would come down. I kept thinking about that the whole time. I was like, man, I would not want to get in that pool.
I have a thing about the pool. Oh, and by the way, the guy who from The Big Bang Theory, he's 5'4" and Adam Driver's 6'3". So
there you go.
Yeah, was just like him picking up a kid. He just like, but the pool. If you watch throughout the movie, it starts off like pristine. It's real pretty. The trees are kind of pulled back a little bit, and then as the movie went, you could see like the overgrowth kind of start coming over, the vines taking over, the water wasn't as clear, the water started to get more murky as the movie went on. So I think it was showing us how, once again, showing us that Adam Driver's this great guy. Everything's clean, nice, and put together. And then by the end of the movie, when they show that there is no water left, it's just muck and mildew and everything. I think it was showing us the bare bones of what Adam Driver was. There was no more covering. There's nothing left there to hide who Adam Driver was.
Or
Henry was.
Go ahead, Larry.
Well, I was saying, yeah, that's a good point. Because I thought of it more of as a metaphor for Annette abandoning the home and everything that just kind of all the traits of herself that her father wanted for her, or exploited her, abandoning that, her abandoning home because, like, and it showed that she wasn't there because, like, clearly she's doing okay. And, like, if he's in jail, like, these are her resources, her things. But, like she said, she'll never sing again. So I imagine she never wanted anything to do with that house again. But I mean, I think that's also, like an equally valid and likely way to look at it as, it's a showing of the illusion, that Adam Driver constructed, being deconstructed, that goes along with like the sort of bruise on his face that just seemed to keep spreading as the movie was going. Those are the cracks in the image that he constructed just falling away.
Yeah, that I was going to bring that up too. And Larry, what you just said was what I was going to say in probably a much shorter and more concise way. But they that as it kept getting, because I was like, does he have a birthmark? Like I thought legit Adam Driver just had a birthmark, and then the next time I saw it, it was bigger, and I was like, what the hell's going on? And then as like his character started to unwind, I started to see it get bigger, and I was like, oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, I thought he had a birthmark too, and I thought like maybe it was like, does he have a birthmark? Because I'm like, Kylo Ren had a scar on his face. I'm like, was it roughly right there? Were they covering something up? Or
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, maybe he just wears makeup and you never see it. And then when it got half the size of his face, I was like, oh no, that's a symbolic thing.
Right.
I was like, okay. The another thing that's repeated multiple times, especially in that first half, is going back to the whole idea of celebrity, the idea of part of your performance. We use the language of I killed tonight, or in the terms of her performance being in the opera, which typically are tragic, she died tonight for the audience. That is said multiple times. I killed, she died. Putting that kind of language, wrapping the language of death around performance, I think there's some kind of meaning, or the filmmaker was trying to say something with that as well.
I agree. When you look at putting your heart into your whatever, when you're passionate about something and you're able to use it as your work, they always say, what is it? If you do something you love, then you never work a day in your life. But it's one of those things where it's not so much that these people love that lifestyle, it's that they pour their whole soul and everything into it, and they happen to get famous out of it, and then they become exploited because of that. And when she's like, I died tonight, it's having to pull on that emotion on a regular basis. I think that would be very like cumbersome to. You look at method actors. Look what Daniel Day-Lewis. He hasn't been in that many movies, but every movie he's in, he becomes that character. He puts so much into it that by the end of it, he has
He's
a
been
hard.
hospitalized several
Yeah.
times for you.
Same thing with Christian Bale when he did like The Machinist, so the effect that kind of mentality has on people's psyche in their lives. I think that they were portraying that in a way as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it has also it's also like another uh window into the character of both characters. He's like, I killed tonight. It's like it seems to be like you said, the amount of work people have to put into these roles or into being celebrity. He's saying I killed. I sacrificed someone for my work, and she's like, I died. Like I gave myself. For what I'm doing. Like I he's exploiting others to get what he needs. She's giving a piece of herself to get what she needs.
Yep.
Yeah, perfectly said. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, there were a little in that first hour and a half. I was like, okay, it's not going over my head. I think I get roughly what he's saying. There's probably a few things I missed, but it's just the way that it was told that I'm like, yeah, I think you could have done this a little better, or you could have shrunk this part and maybe expanded on this part. And like Larry, you pointed out the conductor guy. That was a really cool scene. I like the way the camera panned around him. It was like one shot. The song was decent. It was building something. He's only in like a scene for that first chunk of the movie, and he's a pretty important character in the second half. I thought he should have had a little more. I thought there should have been a little more build up between the conflict of what he was upset about, his love for Anne, the fact that he thought that and Annette might be his child, all that. Yeah, I think there should have been more of that as well in that first hour and a half. Little, just look, I love Adam Driver, and that's the main reason we watched this basically. But I think there was a little too much Adam Driver in the first half.
Well, and it's a balancing act, but I think that once again, when we talk about like narcissism and focusing on him, I think that plays into the overall theme. But I do think that, like we said, that first like 15-minute comedy show that was setting up the character he was wanting everybody to see, you do that in half the time, and then add the composer, add a song with him, and just kind of place it somewhere in the middle, I guess. I think it would have been placed well if you put like a little 3-4 minute song with him right after the whole yacht thing, because they did show that he was sad. They showed, but we didn't know why. We didn't really get why. So if they would have added a song at the beginning where they're working together, or him talking about, hey, I got this great new song for you, and she's like, you know what, we can't work together anymore. I'm with Henry now, and then played that song where he was showing how he was sad that she passed away. I think that adding that would have added a little bit more to that song.
Yeah, I agree. We did need, between his two big scenes, like his introduction and the time skip there, we did need something in between there to sort of, give us an idea what his motivations are, or what his purpose is in this story. Because when he showed back up, I was like, oh, right, that guy again.
Yeah, I agreed. And it's funny because I remembered him from the opening credit, or the opening little sequence, and I was like, oh, okay, he's in this. And then I was like, where is he? I mean, we do get the one stare off. There's the scene where Henry shows up to her performance as she dies for her audience, literally, and they look at each other. And, I mean, it was a good scene, really well done scene, but I agree. I was in a movie that's 2.5 hours long, and there's these long stretches of just monologuing. I did forget about him at certain points.
Well, and that's the stage play aspect of it, but it's still even with those kind of stage plays, they still set up the, I don't know, I want to say antagonist, protagonist, because the composer wasn't really the protagonist, and McHenry was the main focus, but he's definitely the antagonist. But I think having an extra scene with him would have played up, made his reappearance more important, because you would have got that tie-in a little bit more, that maybe he thought it was his kid, and you didn't get that till the very end. But that kind of dropped like a bombshell. Be like, what, really? It didn't suspend disbelief. I was like, oh well, if they were together before, it's a possibility. But to me, it would have added more question marks as to when their relationship ended. When did McHenry's and Anne's relationship begin? I think it would have added a little bit more heart to it. Like, you would have added a little bit more emotion to him dying, because at that point we already found out who Henry was. So him killing the composer didn't surprise me all that much. I was like, oh well, shit.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I saw that coming. Once he was singing behind the tree, nobody can know. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one of those moments, just like, the minute he said, let's talk by the pool, like you said, it's like, no, let's not talk by the pool. Let's go to like a public restaurant or something and talk, like,
Let's go to
Waffle House. Yeah.
yeah. Let's go to Denny's. Hash this out.
Applebee's, ain't nobody in that restaurant doing anything. They'd all see him.
They're
throwing stuff in the microwave.
The motorcycle was featured a lot in the film. So much so I thought it was going to have some kind of plot point, but it didn't. I'm not complaining here. I just thought it was funny. There were several scenes where I just laughed. Like, I was like, man, he loves being on that motorcycle. One scene I thought was a little dangerous. I was like, are they really driving? Like, they're like no helmets, and him and Ann are on the bike, and they're going really fast. And I can't imagine any production allowing that. Maybe it was CG or something. I don't know, or maybe they just did it. But
they just shot where they don't
like, drive as fast as you can on this dark road. But yeah, there's a lot of motorcycle in this movie, man. Maybe the director is a big biker or something. I don't know. Any thoughts on the motorcycle? I kept thinking like he was going to die on it at the end or something.
I was hoping for a Sons of Anarchy ending, and that's how he was going to take himself out. But
spoilers.
Oh yeah, if you haven't watched Sons of Anarchy, probably listen to that part. With a pretty important character, and he may or may not get hit by a semi.
I think they've literally put that shot in like promotional material at this point.
So. Oh yeah. The final season, they show that, like, leading up to that episode. And I think there was like, is it really going to happen? Well, yeah, it fucking happened. But I think his narcissism was leading me to believe that maybe once everything fell apart, he was going to be like, well, but those kind of people don't. They just blame everybody else for their problems, and they don't realize that they're the problem.
Yeah, and as you mentioned that, like, what I thought that was going to be, and I thought this because of the section that, I guess I can only assume was a dream, where she was in her car asleep and someone else is driving, and you see Adam Driver coming towards their vehicle on the bike, and he looks angry, and it looks like they're about to collide. I thought that was just like an omen of things were going to go bad for them in the relationship, and Adam Driver was maybe gonna become obsessive, and like maybe he's stalking her. Maybe she gets a little paranoid every time she hears a bike or something. That especially since we got the scene with the other women coming forward about things he's done. I thought that was an omen that he was going to be on this bike stalking her.
That would have been cool. Like,
it would have made sense.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I love the helm. I mean, when he gets off, he meets her to to she's leaving her show, and the press are there, and he put the helmet on, he pulls it down, and I'm just thinking all these Star Wars jokes. You got Kylo Ren walking over in his full mask. I was thinking, is did the director do that on purpose, or, as a joke, or I don't know. I thought the whole bike stuff, all the bike stuff, was amusing to me.
I it's one of those things where I understand that they're trying to set up metaphors, and they're trying, but once again, it was so laced with the same metaphor, which made it easier to kind of decode. But he had a mask on. He's trying to, so it's a lot of those kind of things that I kept.
You don't see who I really am.
Yes. So every
Yeah.
time something happened, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But it was still funny that there was that many. Like, and it does make it easier when it's the same metaphor. You're just like, oh, okay, I get where they're going with this. But on the same note, I'm like, all right, I get the metaphor. Quick.
I will also say, Coop, as someone who's has long hair, and I like long hair. I think it looks cool. Adam Driver did look like a badass several times. I was like, fuck yeah, dude. He had that hair flowing. I was like, hell yeah, man. I was like, that's cool. So I'll give him that, definitely. Before we finish, I want to go back into the ending again, because we get the trial scene, which I loved. I loved the whole trial, and then we get the scene with his daughter, and we talked about it a little earlier, but it was a hell of a scene. And you can tell, whoever the actress was they got, worked great with Adam Driver. You could tell he was very much invested in that scene. It was very heartbreaking. Spencer, you have, daughters. You texted me that, that shit hit home, in terms of just the way it was played. And that to me, it's funny, because you end a movie, like I said, I had a lot of gripes with the movie, but when you end it that way, that's like, okay, well, shit. That's what made me more irritated. I'm like, I wanted more shit like this, because you were able to pull it off. You took a character that was essentially a literal toy for the entire film, that I really didn't have any investment in, and you gave me one single scene in which I really felt the loss of between him and her. And I don't know, if you want to expand on what you thought about that scene, any other themes we may have missed, and just how you felt the last, say, 10 minutes played out.
It made me cry. And that's because I'm a big fucking baby and I have girls. So that whole sequence where, when she walks in and she's no longer being controlled by him, because, the marionette, the puppet stuff, and she started singing, basically saying that she didn't want nothing to do with him anymore, that she was done with him, that she was done with singing, done with basically being a puppet, which is why she came to life. And him just not realizing that he was the one that fucked up and ruined the relationship goes back to the kind of person he was. But seeing that, and just seeing his daughter like leave and just wave bye to him, and then finally it felt like it hit him, like he realized that she was never going to see him again. She was never going to be a part of his life again. And as a dad, like, I never fucked up like that. I'm not manipulating my kids and using them for financial gain, and I'm not a narcissistic asshole, so I don't have any fear that my kids would do that. But as a parent, fucking up your relationship with your kid, that's a genuine fear. Like, you do something or say something that will scar or hurt them forever. And seeing it happen was a moving moment to me.
Yeah, and it was the scene where she had gained such an understanding for like who he was and how messed up she was, that he was saying, like, well, can't I at least have you, my daughter? And she's like, no, like, can't I love you? And she responds, no, not really. Isn't
Yeah,
he's
cold shit. Yeah,
right, because he's a sociopath, and it's not just saying like no because I don't want to be in your life, which is part of what she's saying, but it's also saying you're incapable of that. So yeah, it was a pretty emotional scene, and it was one where, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't like a lot of the songs, but here I was like, wow, there's a lot of emotion in this. And I'm like, now you don't phone it in. Like this was a big one. This was a pretty well done song. Like I have no complaints about how they ended it. Like a lot of my complaints are pretty front loaded. Like you said, second half of the movie, this scene I feel kind of made it. That and the lead up to him going to prison and his trial and everything, where it seems like he was still trying to weasel his way out of things for a while, but no one was having it. The facade had completely fallen apart. And symbolic of that, again, the scars all the way up his face. So that was the end for him.
Well, what was the name of that? Wasn't the name of that movie with Michael Rooker, Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer?
Yes. Yeah.
I was thinking of that.
That is correct. Yeah. Good reference. That's a good one. That's another movie that's not for everyone. Depends on your state of mind or very disturbing movie. It's funny how many movies there were. I mean, this film sort of is that as well. You had films in the past that would focus on a psychopath or someone who did really bad things, and the entirety of the film would focus on that character to the point where halfway in you're just very uncomfortable. And I guess this movie sort of is that. And arguably we did a film review, and it's up on the channel if you've not heard it. Under the Silver Lake, which that character I don't think is, well, if he is in fact who. Spoilers for that movie. If he is in fact who we think he is a pretty big monster. But I'm not going to say it. But interesting, we've 2 weeks in a row, and this movie, we were not going to do this film. We were going to do a completely different film, but it got such horrible reviews. And so I was like, well, shit, what else is out? And this was out. And I was like, oh, Adam Driver. I didn't know it was 2.5 hours when I texted you guys, but that was a nice surprise when I turned it on. I was like, shit. But following films from that point of view is tricky, where you're focusing on essentially the villain for the entire piece. Joker did it,
And I think I don't think it was the same, but the narcissism and everything else. You look at a movie like, was it American Psycho?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is done to perfection, 10 out of 10 masterpiece. Love that movie.
Yeah, this was like a much more metaphoric musical version of that, but a similar kind of character. Henry McHenry was similar to Patrick. What was his last name? Patrick.
Is it Bateman?
Yes. I wanted to say, but I was like, I know it wasn't Bates.
Wait a minute. It's I want to say
From American Psycho.
Isn't it
Patrick
Bateman?
It's Patrick Bateman.
Yeah, Patrick Bateman. Yeah.
But I think
God, that's a good fucking movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're similar characters.
I
would love to see those two characters hanging out. Bateman and Henry McHenry.
Hell yeah.
Well, Henry McHenry is such a messed up guy. It's the sort of thing where it's like, if he has any friends like a Patrick Bateman, it's like, would he care unless it affects him personally in some way?
Well, I think that Henry McHenry probably has better business cards than
bullshit.
I don't know that they would be friends.
I just want to see them like hanging out. I get the gym. They're both obsessed with working out, so
yeah, that'd be funny. Watching him doing push-ups, smoking cigarettes while Patrick Bateman's having sex with somebody and posing in a mirror.
Putting special creams on his face and yeah, if you've not seen that movie, definitely check it out.
Yeah, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's the sort of thing, like, I think that was a big part of this too, because we mentioned the fact that not only was he a narcissist that was exploiting somebody, but this town was letting him do it and enabling it. And between this and Under the Silver Lake, it's just, I think it just kind of shows that clearly, at least this is the view I think that both filmmakers had, that these are the type of people that run Hollywood.
Yeah.
That make it in this town.
It's a very toxic, destructive environment. And you're right; these are people that work in that world, and they're like, "Hey guys, we're telling you through our films what it is." But it's so is anything that involves a lot of money. The sports world, there's a lot of craziness. Wrestling, I'm a fan of wrestling, and my God, there's all kind of horrible shit that happens in that business as well.
Right.
Money it's a money, man.
Absolutely, because Patrick Bateman, he's just he's a run-of-the-mill businessman. He's not a celebrity or anything, and yet it's still happening in his world in American Psycho, like you guys were saying.
Yeah. But I think do y'all have anything else y'all want to say regarding Annette?
I'm in the minority as far as enjoying the entirety of it.
But that's good, that's two
Okay.
different. I'm not a big musical guy. You are, and so, and I don't know. Me and Larry, we've never really talked about musicals, but different. Spencer watches a lot of musicals. So if this spoke to you, then we know the audience. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so I enjoyed it because the way I looked at it was different than the way you guys did. And like I said, there was a couple things that I still felt could have been shortened up a little bit, but as far as structurally, it felt exactly like a stage play, and I enjoyed the entirety of it.
Yeah, and I'll say this much, while I did enjoy the first half of the movie, it was odd enough and it was interesting enough that this filmmaker, like if they made another thing, I'd likely check out their work because it was just odd enough and it held my interest enough that I'd watch another film, another project they're working on, whether it's same genre or something different, just to see how they're progressing or like if it's as odd as this is, if all their work is this odd. Heck, I might look at their back catalog now that I mention it. And IDMB, the makers of this film.
And I would say congratulations to Adam Driver for being at a point in his career where if he's in something I'm interested, I'm like, okay, what is it? Because he's an interesting performer. Also, if you start watching the movie, if you've watched this whole review and you didn't care about spoilers, if you start the movie and you get to a point where you're just like, this isn't for me, jump to the 1 hour and 30-minute mark exactly. He's on a motorcycle. That's how you'll know you're on the right scene, and then just watch the rest of the movie, and I think you'll enjoy that. But yeah, it was an interesting experience, and yeah, that's basically all I have to say. So we will American Horror Story starting. Yeah. So we should have that review coming up next week, and a few other things are starting soon. So look out for those. Yeah, we'll see y'all next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.